Ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. And all right, I'm glad to see that we're supposed to be nonpartisan, but we had all the people on the left and none on the right, and now we've got people on the right, Sarah. Now that's right. That should make somebody happy. The meeting will come to order, and the distinguished co-chair, Sarah Griffin, will now lead us in the
Pledge of Allegiance. So if everybody would like to stand, and the flag is here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now, as we always do, introduce ourselves. And I'm Barney McHenry, and you just heard from Sarah Griffin.
Mark Castiglione, the Acting Director of Greenway in the National Heritage Area.
Todd Tancredi, Supervisor for the Town of Poughkeepsie.
Jeff Brackett, Executive Vice President, Marist College.
Sally Mazzarella, representing Senator Solan.
Kristen Brown, Ulster County Delegate to the Conservancy.
Steve Rosenberg, Senior Vice President, Scenic Hudson.
Kevin Burke, citizen of Newburgh and member of the Hudson River Valley Greenway.
Betsy Jacks, Executive Director of the Thomas Cole National Historic Site.
Stefan Yarbeck, Hudson River Valley Greenway Conservancy. And Congressman Maurice Hinchey's representative to the National Heritage Area.
Ted Putney, Albany County on the Communities Council.
Andy Schmar from Putnam County on the Communities Council and Executive Director of the Hudson Islands Swine Trust.
And that will go where you, Carl.
Jennifer.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, darling.
Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program.
Scott Keller, Trails and Special Projects Director and Finance Manager for the Greenway and the National Heritage Area.
I'm Phil Giltner. I'm representing Commissioner of Agricultural Markets, Darrell Albertine.
I'm Bill Gordon with the New York State Department of Transportation.
Linda Vonderheder, I'm the representative for the Runster County Greenway Council.
Frank Bergman, Hudson River Boat and Yacht Club Association.
Greg Hellsworth, representing Ulster County on the Greenway Council.
Jane Daniels on the Greenway Conservancy.
Don Mara, member of the Conservancy.
Freddie Garcia, President Chapello, representing President Maris, Dennis Merrick.
Fran Dunwell, DEC, representing Commissioner Joe Martins.
Cindy Lancetta, Ulster County Conservancy member.
Good morning, Jay Ether with the New York State Department of State.
Now we'll go to the first row on the left.
Sally Decker, representing Avalon Council.
Kathleen Davis, Recreation Director and High Park Trail Coordinator.
Ruth Elwell, Accountability Greenway.
President Director of Marketing Communications at Mohawk Preserve.
Eric Ross, Grants Manager at Officer.
Johanna Forrest, Director of the Historical Society of Newburgh Bay Islands.
Historian, Frank Neighbor. Hi, I'm Glenn Vidal, planner of the Department of Council.
Very good.
Good morning, Fred Lee, Vice President of the Little Festival Alliance.
Mary Mulch, Officer of Greenway Trail Committee, and Southern Duchess Ramble Chairman.
Jeff Anzavino, Scenic Hudson.
Jack McGuire, Chair of the Town of Lloyd Environmental Conservation Council.
Winter Aldrich, Town of Red Hook Historian, in our bicentennial year.
Susan Roller Brown, Grant Consultant.
Lisa DeLue, Executive Director of Harlem Valley Rail Trail Association.
Tom Cardy, Board Member, Harlem Valley Rail Trail Association.
Ellen Sherry Epstein with the Columbia Land Conservancy.
Virginia Kasinke, Glenwood Center.
Keely Salomon, Commissioner of Planning for Dutchess County.
Peter Hansen, representing the Village of Brewster.
Joe Chaika from Pattern for Progress with the Village of Brewster today.
Joan Burrows, John Burroughs Association.
Stowe Boyd of Beacon Streets.
And Mark Wildonger with Scenic Hudson.
Beth Campacharo with the Greenway.
All right, we've got, that's everybody, including Wade Aldrich, who really is bicentennial. I think he really is. Now, it's always a pleasure to be at Marist, and one of the nicest parts about it, the Marist people, and the best of all, is Mr. Brack.
Thank you.
Well, thank you and good morning to you all. Far be it from me to keep you from the good business that you're all engaged in. So I'm merely here to welcome you and to thank you for your collective dedication to one of the most beautiful regions, not only in New York State, but as the power of this echo indicates, the world. I also want to let you know that President Murray could not be here in person because he's at the dedication of the Four Freedoms Park, which is the lower tip of Roosevelt Island and commemorates Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his commitment, obviously, to the Four Freedoms. It's a terrific addition to the lower anchor, if you will, of this terrific region known as the Hudson River Valley. And at this point, a little further north, I know we're engaged in a similar dedication to making this region not only more livable, but more economically viable, not only for the present, but for the future. And for that, Marist is very pleased to be a partner individually with organizations and collectively as represented by this Greenway. So thank you very much, and have a terrific day, and keep doing the good work that you're all engaged in doing. Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce Todd Tangriddy, who's the supervisor for the town of Poughkeepsie. It's actually a brand new job since January of this year, but he had been on the town board for the last 10 years, and apparently is actually a graduate from Marist and a lifelong resident. So let's welcome the supervisor.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. I appreciate the invitation and want to welcome all of you to the town of Poughkeepsie and to the beautiful shores of the Hudson River. I appreciate what Marist does here. Obviously, as a graduate of Marist College, I love what they're doing. I think Marist is a bright spot clearly in the town of Poughkeepsie. And, you know, on a personal note, I want to thank all of you for the work you do to make our area, our region so beautiful and keep the trails open. I'm someone who, prior to getting involved in government, I always have been kind of an outdoors guy. Loved the outdoors, liked hiking and trails and so on, but maybe like some residents didn't put a lot of thought into why those trails were there or how they came about, but certainly enjoyed them. And as I've been become more involved in government, I guess, you know, kind of dawned on me, woke up to the fact that there's a lot of effort that goes into, you know, planning and preserving and maintaining these trails and the scenic beauty that's all around us that, you know, we all love about the Hudson Valley. So I want to just thank you for all the work you've done over the years to help ensure that, you know, residents like myself have beautiful trails to, you know, recreate on and you know, the beauty of the Hudson River Valley. So appreciate all you're doing and welcome. Thank you.
Carl, where are you? There he is. All here. Okay. Now we're going to have, We are pleased today to have with us Carl Beard, who's out of uniform because he really is a National Park Service, and he's the Parks and Trails person. He knows more about our river than anyone else in the Park Service, and he's worked works really for, I suppose, that remarkable Sarah Olson, who runs Hyde Park and the Roosevelt stuff in Vanderbilt. And Carl, we're delighted that you're here today. And incidentally, if you haven't been looking, these are first-class photographs that you guys have gotten together, Scott. They really are. And there's also one I see of slab sides on there too as well. And that's
from the Hudson Valley Ramble this year. So we just showcase the diversity of experience that was had by all.
Okay, you'll get your turn. Carl.
Thank you, Barney. Thank you, Sarah, for having me as part of this program. I'm with National Park Service. I work for a small program within National Park Service that's called Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance. And New York State is actually my area of responsibility. My landlady is, in fact, Sarah Olson up at the Roosevelt Vanderbilt sites, but that's where my office is, and I work on projects all over the state, and I've worked with many of the people in the room here over the years. And today, I hope it's not news, but I bring good news, and that is the Hudson River Greenway Water Trail has been designated a national water trail. And what I want to do in the next few minutes is to talk about what that means in the national context, also the state and regional context, and also to each of us in our respective agencies, organizations, and communities. So, and this photograph is not from one of yours. This is one from a wonderful fellow, Ken Allen, who is an expert on water trails. Now I need to experiment with this. Did anything happen? Technology is your friend, my friend today. Anyway, so first of all, let's be clear about what we're talking about. You know, what is a water trail? And I have to say, it's more than just a nice place to go paddling. There are certain things that we really need to be careful about. So a water trail is a recreational route on a waterway. The surface of the water is the trail. That part's easy. It has to have public access points, places where you and I can get to it. That are publicly sanctioned, not just you can sneak under the bridge, get your canoe in, and nobody will notice. That's not a trail. And since these things, water trails, are complicated, they tend to be run by some sort of partnership. And the rest, providing conservation, recreation opportunities. That's kind of obvious. So, okay, that's what a water trail is. How about a national water trail? What do we mean by that? So a national water trail is an exemplary water trail. It's designated by the Secretary of Interior or the Secretary of Agriculture, and it's recognized as part of the National Trail System. And this last part is really important. It's managed by a local management entity. There, I have to get out of the way of these things. And that's really important because even though you have national status, that responsibility stays at home. That stays with us. With our respective parks, communities. It's coordinated by the Hudson River Valley Greenway in partnership with the Hudson River Water Trail Association. So all of that stays here. There's no taking of any rights or anything like that. So one of the key points is this makes you a part of the National Trail System. What do we mean by that? The National Trail System Act of 1968 established three kinds of water trails, or three kinds of trails. The first are the National Historic Trails. Those are, Mormon Pioneer, Trail of Tears, Oregon Trail, all of those American icons, those travel routes. The second are the National Scenic Trails, things like the Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, those huge landscape experiences. Now, those kinds are created by Congress. A study directed by Congress, generally done by National Park Service, a bill written, passed by Congress, signed by the President. That's what it takes to create one of those kinds of trails. Big deal. The third kind of trail that was created was national recreation trails. And those are kind of the community element, the statewide, local, regional element. And those happen by a secretarial proclamation, by Secretary of Interior. Now that's been the story since 1968, and what changed this year was the newest member of the family, National Water Trails. And they're very similar to the National Recreation Trails. They're established by secretarial order. So that's what the national picture looks like. So what are the goals of the National Water Trail System? They're easy. Basically, the Secretary Salazar wants to create, and many of us want to create, this national network of water trails. This is a new kind of experience, using water as trails. And I guess the key part here really is increasing access to outdoor recreation. This is a crying need all around the country. I think we do it better here than most other parts of the country. And the other part is building a community of mentors, of experts, people like some of the people in this room whose expertise is needed nationwide. So, that's what it's about. Who else is in the family now? National Water Trails. There are 9 of them designated so far, scattered around the country. We have 2 in New York State. This one out the window, and also the Bronx River. The only other state that has 2 is Georgia. So that's what the family looks like. It's pretty good company. How do you get to be one of those? You have to do more than just get wet. There's an application and a review process. You have to be open to public use. Your trail has to be designed, constructed, and maintained. That's what makes it a trail, not just a nice place to go paddling. You have to comply with environmental regs, things like that. And here's the obligation. You have to be open for 10 years after designation. You can be de-designated. But I don't think we have a problem with that here. And the other part is designation must be supported by the people who provide that access. Not a problem here. You already have an application process for Greenway Trail access points. So that's what the picture looks like. And the people who crafted the National Water Trail System, they look for best management practices. What are the things that make this water trail exemplary water trails worthy of national recognition? And I just want to rip through these really quickly, but think about each one of them and how the Hudson River, I think, makes it in spades, really, in each of these categories, each of these 7 categories. First is recreation. That's easy. But it also involves safety. It's not just having fun. Real big safety message in there. Second, education. Not only can you go there, but there are opportunities to come away from that water trail with some new understanding or learning. And I just love the expression on this girl over here. That look of steely resolve, on her face. And I just think we need more young women like that. Conservation, community support, and I think the fact that you have 96 or 97 self-designated access points, you've got it way ahead of most other water trails in the country. Public information, my colleague who created this slide picked us out as the poster child nationwide. You have a website, you have a publication, you have kiosks on site. Maintenance, again, easy here, not well done elsewhere around the country. And planning, you have to have a plan. So, what does all this mean for us? What are the direct benefits? And this is a huge attaboy, first of all. There's no huge funding or anything like that, but it positions you for national recognition. So there's a national website, National Water Trail website, so you get national exposure. One thing that, and you also get, I think, me as your new partner. I'm now directed to work with you on your water trails as my role from the National Park Service. It also asks something of you. It asks for your expertise and your participation. What does it mean for communities? There have been studies around the country about benefits of water trails. I think one of the most interesting is paddlers spend money in the communities, and believe me, if you come out of a kayak or a canoe, you're going to want to enjoy a local restaurant. That's just something that paddlers do. So one study looked at a good example in rural communities, spending $27 to $63 a day. I know that Scott says on the Great Hudson River Paddle in 2010, I think your paddlers spent something like $135 per day. So it varies around the country. It's good news. Good news in the host communities. And Northern Forest Canoe Trail, I don't know if you know about that one, it goes through 5 states, through the Adirondacks, northern New England to Maine. They figured, through a fairly careful study, that they've created about 280 jobs across those 5 states. Significant expenditures. So, what does this do for us? It positions the Hudson River Greenway water Trail nationwide. I think it gets us national exposure. There's a website again. It's going to help draw more visitors to our communities, to our river, and it'll draw the benefits that they bring with them. It is a validation of good work, and it's a hope and expectation that we will continue with that good work. There are some innovations that have happened here, thanks to Scott and others, developing kayak racks and accessible kayak ramps that are now nationwide models. We need more models like that, and I think we can bring those. And it's an encouragement to keep partnering, to do the kinds of good things that have gone on here over the years. Finding ways to contribute as well as benefit from water trails. Now that's all I've got, and I just have a trivia question for you, and that is, can anyone name the date and place where the National Water Trails movement began? I'll accept any hands. Scott? At Norrie Point on the Hudson River. This is where we held the very first National Water Trails Symposium, drawing people from Maine, from the Puget Sound, from the big rivers in the west, and we did it here at Norrie Point. So I think you've got it in spades, and I look forward to working with you to continue this water trail as a national model. Now we do have a poster over here that's a product of my program.
Don't leave, Carl, because the likely questions. This is pretty important stuff. Incidentally, that sidebar on Scott. Scott Keller has been working on this water trail with you for not as long as Winnie Aldrich, but nobody's been.
Yeah, and you'll need one of these for your kayak. There are kayak stickers downstairs. There's a little card that gets you to the National Water Trails website, which is still under development, and there's also a brochure about the National Water Trail system. Now, Scott, you have, if I can ask your Vanna White, inner Vanna White. So we also have this plaque that was presented from the Secretary of Interior and the Director of National Park Service. Oh, look at that! You can read 2 messages at once. Marie Cinci was good enough to present at a ceremony up at Kingston Point earlier in September. So, thanks once again.
Questions about? Yes. Somebody raise a hand.
I'd just like to thank Carl because he was instrumental in the designation. He's been instrumental in the development of the water trail, and he's going to be instrumental in helping us expand it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks also to you, Scott Keller, because in those rather grainy photographs in there, you'll see Scott in his. It's a yellow kayak that you have?
Red.
Red kayak. Well, I'm not very good on colors, and you've gone down the river how many times?
10.
Okay, okay, match that if you can. Now, we are fortunate for many things on the river, but one of the most important is the public officials who helped to make, and we were talking, except for Winnie Aldrich, who's hundreds of years older than I am, is that the first time I saw this place, there were the ruins of an old foundry down the river here. This is mostly fill all along, and there was that lumber yard down there. You remember, Sarah, when that, well, you're too young. But there was a lumber yard down there. There was a lot of bad stuff in this river. We turned our backs on it on most of the 20th century. In the 21st century, wonderful things began to happen, and one of the most wonderful of them all is Mark Molinaro. And well, that's him. And yeah. And I'll tell you, always be nice to the people who are nice to you, because some of the folks up in Albany were keen to have the Greenway turned into a takeout center or something. We're going to eliminate it. And you saved our ass. And that's
That might be the nicest thing I've ever heard. I saved your ass. Well, anyway, thank you. I was happy to do so, working with State Senator Steve Saland. He and I went at Judith Enck for a little while, and we were able to work our way through then Governor Patterson's desire to eliminate the Greenway. I want to get back to that in a moment, because I do want to offer a charge to all of us. But I first apologize for being a little bit late. Apparently, when you're county executive, you're expected to be at a lot of places and don't want to be at many of them. I wanted to be here, but I had a few this morning, and I apologize. I suppose that Supervisor Tancredi took well care of you in his introduction. Todd is a great public servant, and this is a great, a wonderful facility within the town, and of course it kind of shares its relationship with the city of Poughkeepsie as well. But so I apologize for that. I do want to mention, though, Wint Aldrich, when I say that you're old, it's almost a compliment. When Barney says you're old, you might as well just really, well, I don't know what you do, but usually I save the jokes for Wint. Wint and I go way back, not that far back, since he's been around since much longer than I have. But it's as always, Wint, nice to see you. I appreciate the fact that someone else was poking fun at you and not me. I do want to mention that Senator Saland is on his way. He was probably at 3 other events, most of which I was at, just a few minutes behind me. Welcome to Dutchess County, and welcome back to Dutchess County. And it's a real honor and privilege to be able to stand before you today as county executive. For many years, I sat there as a village mayor, where we attempted to implement not only the Greenway principles, but to put into practice in a real way our village of Tivoli's reconnection with the Hudson River. It's nice to see my friend Greg Helsmortel here, because we worked a number of years, and sadly Mayor Yerrick just passed away, but Greg and the Saugerties mayor, Bob Yerrick, and I worked a number of years to really reconnect Tivoli and Saugerties, a connection that had ceased to exist when the whole world turned its back on the Hudson River. So all those years ago, I sat there as a state assemblyman, as was noted. It was my pleasure just to rattle a few cages and get people focused again, because there was a desire to eliminate the Greenway from the state of New York's, decision-making process, mostly because I think there was a lack of understanding of its importance and significance in the Hudson Valley. I don't think it was because at the time they didn't care about the Hudson River and our environmental resources. I just don't think they understood that the Hudson River Valley is a strange region, and I don't offer that word lightly. It is a unique region. It is both horizontal and vertical. It is linear, and it is a collection of diverse communities with, I think, both different histories, but also very different perspectives for the future, all webbed together by one resource that, again, this state and nation turned its back on 30 years ago, the Hudson River. So I want to offer to you our perspective here in Dutchess County. We embrace the Greenway. Of course, we've been an active and engaged partner. The Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, and I'll be, just as I was late, I'll be leaving early, but I'll leave you one of our finest, Commissioner Keely Solomon, who's here from the Department of Planning. But we not only embrace the principles, we put them into practice. And we've said to municipalities, no more can you accept resources and assistance from county government without putting into practice those land use principles, those that we articulate in our Dutchess County Greenway Compact. You no longer can see those resources or assistance unless you put those into practice, that it's not a document and a set of ideas that we were to leave on a shelf. That, in fact, these are the things we believe in. The connection of the Hudson River, the preservation of our natural resources, sustainable economic development in our village and city centers. And this web, if you will, between our need to revitalize our economy and preserve natural resources. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. But we don't want to necessarily support activities and decision-making that doesn't put into practice those ideas. So what then is the charge for us as Greenway members? We've got to step it up. And I don't say that lightly. The Governor's Economic Development Councils, the regional councils, have created a new dynamic, regions within regions, all competing for resources. That's great, and Governor Cuomo has provided, I think, a great opportunity for us to compete and show the rest of the state and the world that we are, in fact, a dynamic and vibrant region in need of great assistance, great support, and with great potential before it. But we lack an organized leadership structure. And I say this to my legislative friends, I say this to my county executive friends. Everybody in local office thinks that the only decisions that matter are the ones that occur within their municipalities, within their legislative districts, within their county boundaries. We all say we work together, and then we all compete for resources. We all say we want to work together, and then we say, hey, employer, would you mind jumping from Westchester to Dutchess, or Orange to Dutchess, or Ulster to Dutchess? I'd say the other way around, but it wouldn't work for me, you know, from Dutchess to Orange. But I believe it. And you are the leadership that exists in this region that can make that kind of mentality shift. You can make that occur. And we have to push it. We have to say to our state legislative delegation, we understand that you stretch from Westchester to Albany and beyond, but there is a need in the Hudson River Valley that we have a voice in Albany. And we don't. We have many voices competing often. We have some loud ones. Senator Saland has been paramount, if you will, to the Greenway success, and certainly to the many ways the success of some of those programs within the Hudson River Valley that have prospered. Congressman Hinchy, retiring, but also a voice for the Hudson River Valley. Richard Brodsky used to be. The state delegation is in desperate need of sort of regionalization. We have to push that in Albany because no one else is going to fight for us. No one else is going to advocate for us, and no one else is going to speak for us. And they have to work together to accomplish a shared goal and shared objective for a region that has a great deal of commonality. Your county executives all need to work together. The fact that there is a river between us means very little to me. The economy stretches beyond that river. The environment stretches beyond that river. Travel and transportation and the way in which we function as humans travel beyond the river. I'm sorry to take a little bit of time, but I would tell you that when I came into office, my predecessor said, I never ate at a restaurant outside of Dutchess County. Well, first of all, I found that to be nonsense. Or as I heard, malarkey is the word of the day. I give him credit for saying it. But I live in the northwest corner of Dutchess. I eat in Saugerties. I eat in Columbia County. We shop in Ulster County. We shop in Connecticut and Dutchess County. We go to Putnam or to Woodbury Commons to do a little bit of shopping. Point being that municipal boundaries only mean something to municipal officials. We as a region have to recognize that decision-making has to extend and go well beyond those municipal borders. And municipal leaders will listen to you if you speak loudly and clearly with that desire and that goal and that hope. And then lastly, I would offer to you that the way in which government has functioned in the state of New York for the last 200 years hasn't changed all that much. I have the utmost respect for my friends in local government. I was one of them. I guess in a sense I was exiled in Albany for 5 years, and I've returned home as a local official. But we have to challenge ourselves to do better and do things differently. This structure of government in the state of New York is outmoded for the complexities of the day. It is overwhelmed by the challenges of the day, and it is antiquated. It is a model that was created hundreds of years ago, before people could communicate without a horse in 3 days dividing us. It was a government structure that just doesn't necessarily work well in an economy and in a place where agility is necessary, where effective and proactive response, oxymoron, is necessary, where the concepts of municipal boundaries mean very, very little. So please, if you're local officials, if you serve with local officials, if you work with local officials, it's time that we challenge ourselves to do things differently. And I have always felt the Hudson River Valley Greenway was, in fact, the clearinghouse, the starting point, the table at which we're to have the kind of progressive, I'm not supposed to say that as a member of a particular political party, a progressive dialogue about how we transform government and get government, especially in this region, focused on commonality, on regionality, and the concept that the decisions that one taxing jurisdiction makes has a profound impact on the decisions of another taxing jurisdiction, and that just because one community wants to grow its tax base doesn't mean that some other community is supposed to fail in its hope to see great success and prosperity, but rather we need to work together to accomplish success and prosperity for us all as a region. And if this is not the place to have that conversation in the Hudson River Valley, there is no other place. So I encourage you to stay focused, to stay energized, and stay committed to this region we love, this place that is brought together by a river that is as majestic as it is significant in our history and in our future. And to all of you, I would just offer that the time really is now to challenge ourselves and those who call themselves leaders to do better. Otherwise, we're going to lose ground, we're going to miss opportunities, and we're going to lose resources. And I have the utmost faith and confidence in every one of you, because it was all those years ago that we in Albany said the Hudson River Valley has a voice, it needs to be heard, it needs to be preserved, and it is called the Greenway. So all of you, God bless, thank you, and keep up the great work.
Well, if that wasn't a call to arms, I don't know what was. So what a wonderful, just a great segue into what actually is our business at hand. And oh, right. Well, and so, yes, we have one more presentation in the segue of presentations before the business at hand. So I will turn the podium over to Mark.
See that, Kevin Burke? We just made a mistake, but if we just plow right through, nobody will notice, right? Kevin's getting married on Sunday, as our advice. Well, Mark Molinaro mentioned that the conversation is going to happen anywhere it happens in the Hudson Valley. We know the Hudson Valley is the birthplace of the modern environmental movement. Carl Beard mentioned it's the place where the first conversations about the National Water Trail program happened. It's also the place where this group of people had this wacky idea that this old dilapidated railroad bridge could be transformed into a recreational resource that could also be a tremendous economic development driver. So the Greenway has been a partner in that process since day one. I think provided one of the first grants for a feasibility study back in 1992. And we all know the success that the walkway over the Hudson has become. And now many partners, including the Greenway, including the City of Poughkeepsie, the Town of Lloyd, and many others, are focusing in on how to use the walkway as a ribbon or as sort of the bow tie that connects a lot of these economic development opportunities, and focusing in on the walkway region as a gateway to the Hudson Valley experience. You see on your agenda today that Mara Farrell from the Fishkill Supply Depot is listed. Well, Mara unfortunately had to cancel her presentation. She'll be on the agenda in January, and our friends at Scenic Hudson, Steve Rosenberg and Jeffrey Anzavino, will be presenting on the tremendous progress and plans that are in development to use the walkway as a gateway to the region. So let me introduce Steve Rosenberg and Jeffrey Anzavino from Scenic Hudson.
Thank you, Mark, and it's great to be here to talk about the initiative that we call Walkway as Gateway to Success. And there are a lot of people around the room who've participated in this already in one way or another. But we'd like to share with you the initiative and where we're going next with it, and hopefully get your ideas and input along the way as well. Scenic Hudson was involved early in the walkway project as a financial contributor, and we also conceived of the walkway loop trail. How many people here have walked the walkway loop trail? Terrific. And you know, the idea for that was sort of in some way a seed for this broader idea. The idea was, how can we take the walkway that a lot of people would come to, and what was it, 1.5 million people, Sally, in the first year and a half that came and visited the walkway. But the concern was they would come to Poughkeepsie or to Highland, they'd walk back and forth, and they'd go home. And what we wanted to make sure of was that the connective tissue between the walkway and the communities on either side was really strong and effective and attractive to the people who came and visited the walkway. So shortly after it was clear that all these people were coming to Walkway, we convened a group of people, and we, together with the Walkway organization and the Dutchess Regional Chamber of Commerce, came up with this idea of how can we leverage the success of the walkway in a more coordinated fashion than was already occurring to benefit the communities on either side, and actually see that then be a catalyst for even more recreational trails, complementary economic development activity, and quality of life benefits for the communities. So we had a meeting in our office, and local business people, restaurant owners, people from other nonprofits in the Poughkeepsie and Highland area, and other governmental agencies came together. And what was clear was all these people sort of on their own were already coming up with ideas on how to tap into this energy of the walkway. But these ideas were not coordinated in any coherent fashion. So with the generous support of the Dyson Foundation, which has been, as everyone here knows, supportive of so many critical efforts to tie together what so many of us are doing, we were able to launch this initiative, which involves two key strategies. One is a branding and wayfinding strategy, so that the communication message to the general public at the walkway and beyond is clear and consistent and attractive. And secondly, a zoning strategy, which Jeff will talk about in particular, so that when the walkway hits the ground on either side of the river, you know, the zoning that's in place in Poughkeepsie, for example, was developed decades ago around the idea of railroad and industrial use and activities. That's not the kind of zoning that you want in place to promote revitalization and redevelopment and enhancement of the neighborhoods around the walkway terminus, so that it will benefit the community and complement the state park that is there. So we hired consultants. We apologize, we had relatively late notice in putting this presentation together. We had hoped that our consultant could be here, and I also want to say that Elizabeth Hart from the Walkway and Charlie North from the Chamber regret that they couldn't be here as well. But Jeff and I will do our best to sort of walk you quickly through the branding and zoning strategies, and hope that you like what you see. So I'm going to stand off to the side here. The key objectives of the branding strategy are to communicate the idea that the greater walkway region extends beyond the walkway itself, as I mentioned. That we want to attract visitors from various places, and there are obvious large markets like the New York metro area, probably the key market, but we know that many of the people who come to Walkway and to the region are from the immediate region. And we also know that people come for different reasons, and they're seeking different types of experiences. And then, of course, we want to stimulate local stakeholders, the people in this room, the tourism agencies, Mary Kay Verba and others, to provide greater visitor value, again, around a coherent communications and marketing theme. I don't know how to
There we go. Jeff.
So we all know that Walkway is tremendously successful in attracting people here, and the people that come here and they spend their dollars. And when people come to Walkway, I'm sure everyone in this room have been up there. It's a great place to be. After an hour or two or perhaps 3, you're kind of done with your walk and you need to find something else to do. So Poughkeepsie and Highland, as Mark Molinaro just mentioned, this idea of regionalism. We're taking both communities on both sides of the river, creating a region and trying to come up with some economic impact from that. We thought, studies projected Walkway would get about 267,000 visits a year after Walkway was built. We were all pleasantly surprised that 750,000 people came the first year, and now it's kind of leveling off at 500,000 visits a year. This doesn't mean 500,000 different people, but 500,000 times someone goes on to Walkway over the Hudson. And it's created a tremendous economic impact in both communities, in both counties. Almost $800,000 in annual county revenue in both counties. Almost $24 million in annual sales, and that's direct and indirect spending. $9.5 million in wages, and created almost 400 jobs. So Walkway has really been a great economic generator here in the region without almost any coordinated effort. Now we're going to coordinate those efforts to bring these benefits to both communities. So Brandon. You want me to do it, or you can do it? Either way. There's one on the right.
Great. So our consultants worked in many different venues, focus groups, surveys, pulling people off the walkway itself and interviewing them. And the goal was to come up with a sort of a logo, a tagline, and a way of communicating clearly. And the ultimate conclusion of that was the name, the Greater Walkway Region, the heart of the Hudson. And this is the logo that they came up with for the Greater Walkway Region. And the idea is to have a very consistent and recognizable symbol, so that if you're in the hamlet in Highland and you're driving and you see this symbol, you immediately think that where you are is in some way connected to the walkway. So instead of not having any idea where you are, you feel comfortable, you feel like you're in the right place, and there's a system that is consistent and clear that helps you to navigate your experience. So the logo, one of the things that was very important for us is to make sure that local businesses and other institutions that already have a marketing campaign of some sort that exists can incorporate this without confusing people, and instead just reinforce the idea that where you are is part of the region. So if you're the walkway itself, you can have the logo. If you're a restaurant, you might have that symbol on your restaurant window, so that somebody walking by again has a sense that they're in the right place. The overall approach that the consultants came up with involves 4 strategies. First, to leverage the already substantial walkway visitor group by providing wayfinding and other local area information, creating better visual materials to promote the walkway region, provide a basic tourism kit, and we've been working with Dutchess and Ulster County tourism offices on those concepts, and to market the Greater Walkway region to consumer segments with the most potential. And that goes to this idea that people come to the walkway to get different things out of their experience. And so there are, with respect to the signage, there are 3 levels of signs. There are what we call sort of regional gateway signs that are at the highest level. Then there are what the consultants call exploration zones. And think of this as sort of neighborhoods. Mount Carmel in Poughkeepsie, or as you begin to head north along the waterfront towards Marist, and ultimately perhaps up to the Culinary Institute and to Hyde Park, there can be individual sort of neighborhood zones to familiarize people. And then directional signs that will help people to get from place to place. So these are not what they actually propose, but it's just sort of to give you an idea for the regional gateway signs. So perhaps at the parking lots for the walkway itself and at the Metro North train station, key locations where lots of people will have access to the gateway region, there'll be a sign that gives you a sense of the whole. The consultants talk about this concept of 360 degrees of discovery. So it goes to the idea that when you're on the walkway itself, you have this panoramic 360-degree view, but it also begins to get you to think about a wide and diverse range of activities that you could engage in. Then down to this exploration zone or neighborhood zone idea, there would be more narrowly focused signs that give you information about the individual neighborhoods you're at. So if you're on the walkway loop trail, or if you're driving through Poughkeepsie to one of the parking lots, and you see this very recognizable symbol with the bridge and the river and the walkway W there, one, you understand you're in the right place again, and you then, for the first time, have the opportunity to know you're not just driving down a street in Poughkeepsie, you're in the Mount Carmel Historic District, and you have an opportunity to learn about what's there, the restaurants and the shops that are there, etc. And with respect to wayfinding, the plan is to have directional signs like this that point you to individual exploration zones or neighborhoods within the greater walkway region. How are we doing on time, Mark?
We've got about 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to dispense with a lot of the further details and say the different sort of activity groups that the consultants identified include what they call New York Metro hikers and bikers, people from the New York Metro region who come up to the valley, and in addition to liking to just sort of walk on the walkway, they would want to go to Franny Reese State Park, or maybe in addition they'd go to the Mohonk Preserve or some other nearby place. History buffs, certainly. What they call the Hudson liners, and they think there's a tremendous opportunity to capture people who use Metro North regularly to go into the city, to turn more of them around to come up. And local pride, all of the people who live in the immediate region who want to get more out of the experience. Jeff, you've got 2.5 minutes.
So the zoning and the branding are designed to work together. This is a great time to implement these programs because as the economy is down, we can take a little bit of a breather. We can put the right plans in place so that when things come back, things can get cooking again. As Steve mentioned, on the Poughkeepsie side, you have a lot of abandoned industry. The idea is to create, we've hired a consultant working on both sides of the river to do form-based codes, very much in line with the Greenway principles and the Greenway Compact. Mixed-use development, buildings closer to the street, more flexibility of use is a highly illustrated code so that it will be easier for planning boards to interpret and developers to understand exactly what's expected of them. On the Highland side of the river, things are a little bit different. So the area in Poughkeepsie, really we're talking about Parker Avenue and Washington Street, pretty narrowly focused area. Why this is important is because the Dutchess Rail Trail will soon be extended between Walkway over the Hudson, we call the gap, between Walkway over the Hudson and the existing Dutchess Rail Trail. That will go behind lots of properties where right now you see things like junkyards, and abandoned garages like this. These are going to be prime places for people to redevelop. On the Highland side, it's a little bit different. It's the 9W corridor between the Mid-Hudson Bridge approach and Milton Avenue that goes down into the Highland, the hamlet of Highland. The idea there is to create an extension of the hamlet that comes up 9W and connects with the walkway and the rail trail. The planning board is a great champion of this in the town of Lloyd. I give them a lot of credit. They understand that the road has devolved into a 5-lane highway with a center suicide turn lane and development on the side of the road with abandoned car dealers now, strip malls and shopping centers. They want to bring that back, create more of a Main Street feel, again with mixed use, 2-3-story buildings, greater intensity of use. And they're on board, and we're working on some draft zoning. We're going to be presenting it to the full board real soon and be getting a public comment. We hope to have this all wrapped up within a month or two at the latest. Probably within a week or two. So I think, I had 2.5 minutes, and I don't want to take any more time. I think this just shows you the area in Highland, right here, and in Poughkeepsie, right along Parker Avenue, right here. And we'd love to have anybody who wants to know more, see me, give me your card, and I'll put you on the mailing list. We've got about 200 people on the mailing list. Do we have time for questions?
Yeah, I think it's...
There's no trouble making the pedestrian connection with the automobile bridge on both ends?
No. You mean the walkway loop trail?
Yeah.
No. As a matter of fact, the Bridge Authority, maybe 10 years ago, has built a set of stairs from the Poughkeepsie side right down a ramp, an accessible ramp down to Rinaldi Boulevard, a little residential neighborhood there. You can walk to the train station. Maybe. Yeah, that's right from the Mid-Hudson Bridge. There's a pedestrian loop that goes down to Long Street, actually, and loop right through to the train station. On the other side, the Bridge Authority also built a set of stairs that goes down from Johnson Iorio Park under a beautiful archway under the stone abutment of the Mid-Hudson Bridge to connect to about 3 miles of hiking trails in Franny Reese State Park. The trail then goes up Haviland Road and across walkway. It's 4.5 miles long. It provides access from the Poughkeepsie train station so that 17 million member a person New York City market can get here without a car. And by the way, once that elevator is done, Sally, thank you for that elevator.
August 9th, 2013.
The day after my birthday, I'll be celebrating that. We'll be celebrating. When that elevator gets done, as you know, any kind of transportation improvement is going to increase property values. So people can come to this elevator, instead of walking all the way up here and taking maybe an hour to get to Highland, and I live over there in Highland, so I'm a little bit partisan, go right to the elevator and over. It's going to really open up access to the other side of the river.
Wait, I thought you were raising your hand to offer a rebuttal to the earlier comments, but...
Certainly not.
Well, thank you both. They got the phone call from me yesterday at about noon asking them to fill in this presentation. Oftentimes on projects like this that deal with a big vision, they don't get to the specifics of land use regulation. This takes it from A to B, and it's a really tremendous project. We look forward to working with them. So join me in thanking Jeff and Steve.
Wow, that was just fascinating. Steve and Jeff, thank you. It does lead to that much more of an inspiring moment to actually begin the actual business of the day. We do have our agenda. Hopefully the board has reviewed it. If there are no other comments, we will proceed on the agenda. We do have minutes from our June 7th meeting, and so we need to ask for a motion to approve those minutes. Sally, and anyone else second? Don, thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Then the motion is carried. And with that, it's my great pleasure to recognize our esteemed Senator Steve Saland, who has joined us. We understand that you have been already to 3 or 4 events, so you have graced us with your presence. There's no greater champion of the Greenway and so many initiatives in the Hudson Valley than Senator Saland.
Steve, remember earlier I referred to the fact that Mark Molinaro saved a valuable part of our body. Is this body, the Greenway, would not have been born but for the efforts of 2 people who were then in the New York State Legislature. Actually, as Steve is now, of course, a senator. But he wasn't born a senator before that, and he was the father of the Greenway with Maurice Hinchy, the 2 of them in the assembly started it. And
And Steve, sometimes we're most often grateful, but not always. But the thing is, but we're grateful to you for what you did. You've done extraordinary work. He just had a resounding victory of 104 votes.
Well, that's for another time and another place, Barney.
And Steve, Senator Steve Salan, the father of the Greenway.
Well, thank you, thank you. As I watched the walkway presentation, I must tell you, when then Assemblyman Hinchey and I, prior to obviously his becoming congressman, negotiated the Greenway, we certainly had expectations, and I must tell you that my expectations have not only been met, but they continue to be exceeded, and that's a tribute to many of you who are here, and some of whom have preceded you, and I'm sure some of whom will follow you. And permit me just something anecdotal, and then I'll move on and let you complete your agenda. My wife and I were, and it's in the context of the walkway, which was something I was also keenly interested in, worked with so many others to help get up and running or walking or whatever you might like. My wife and I were at the Poughkeepsie Grand Hotel, coming down the elevator with a couple, and my wife, for those of you who know her, and some of you do, is rather loquacious, and she wouldn't be happy unless she could get that chair to talk to her. And so she's always engaging people. And there was this lovely couple in the elevator with her, and my wife, of course, struck up a conversation, said, "Where are you from?" "We're from the Finger Lakes." "When did you get here?" "Well, we got here yesterday." "What brought you here?" "We wanted to go to the walkway." And so they talked about the walkway, and we talked about the fact that we had been to the Finger Lakes, and we commended them for living in a lovely part of the state, and telling them what a lovely part of the state we lived in. And then my wife proceeded to give them a litany of other places they should go while they were here. So I saw Mary Kay earlier. She's working hard for you, Mary Kay, and for all of us. Let me, if I might, I've been offered the opportunity to share with you the grants that will be handed out by for this year by the Greenway Conservancy Small Grant Program. For a number of years, I've worked very hard to try to ensure funding for the Greenway. When we got the Greenway up and running, there were questions about how were we going to finance it, and there's been a certain ebb and flow, and thankfully it still continues to flow, although I would like to see it flow a little more rapidly. Perhaps a little more voluminously might be appropriate. Let me, if I might, share with you the projects that have been funded. The Harlem Valley Rail Trail in Columbia County from Copake Falls to Hillsdale. Early trail opening project is a recommended project for $15,000. The Beacon Arts Community Association in Dutchess County, the Beacon Loop Trail improvements and bicycling safety education for $2,616. In the town of Stillwater in Saratoga County, the historic Stillwater multi-use trail recommended at $5,000, and the Mohonk Preserve in Ulster County, Mohonk Preserve Foothills Trail connectivity planning project at $5,000. Rensselaer Plateau Alliance Inc. in Rensselaer County, the Rensselaer Plateau Regional Trails Vision of $8,384. The Hudson Crossing Park Inc. in Saratoga County, kayak storage racks and sensory trail improvements, $5,000. And John Burroughs Association in Ulster County, gateway improvements and trailhead parking, $4,000. This is obviously a part of the continuum that has been going on now for better part of nearly 2 decades. And hopefully will long exceed my mortality and yours. It's wonderful to live in the Hudson Valley. We have much to share. We have much to offer. Wherever you may travel, hither and yon, coming home is always great. stands up to any region of the world, and we continue to make it better because of the kinds of things that you're doing here. So thank you for what you do, and I will continue to do my best to the extent that I can to make your efforts and your opportunities that much better and greater. Thanks.
Those grants would not have happened but for Senator Salam. He is, over the years, you know, well, I'm busy talking to Sally, but we should add them up, Mark. Where the heck are you? Yeah, we should add up those things. It's probably getting close to $1 million.
The Conservancy grants, our total grant awards throughout history have been about $8.4 million.
Conservancy grants are 2.7.
2.7 million.
Well, okay, shows you how bad at math I am. Sarah?
Well, it is particularly wonderful to have Senator Salam be able to announce these grants, symbolic of how deeply involved he has been over these years in making these happen. So ordinarily we would talk about the grants, announce them, and then call for a motion. Given that the Senator has already announced them, and I congratulate all of you who have, I will ask the board, now I will ask for a motion to approve, this is the Conservancy Board, to a motion to approve these grants. Stefan is, and Kevin is second. And I will ask anyone who, you know, so many of us are involved with so many of these grants. We always have to remind ourselves to recuse ourselves if we have had an actual involvement with it. So I will ask for a sign of ayes to approve this. How many want to approve this? Okay. And
recuse myself for the Mohawk Preserve. It is in our town, and the town of New Paltz Town Board sent a letter of support for this application, but it doesn't come to the town of New Paltz, so I don't know if I need to abstain or not. If I don't, thank you. I'm so happy to vote for that grant.
Okay. All right, so I was looking for the word. All in favor, so that was the aye. Any opposed? And then the motion carries. So congratulations. And now I think we can move on to the council. We switched agendas.
Query, Mark, I always have to ask questions. Is there anybody here from our new community?
Salem?
Yeah.
It might as well be in Wisconsin. So
yes or no? There's no one here. We didn't let them out. Right. Okay. All right. Well, now we'll go. I'm going to turn this over to Mark and Steve. Thank you again for coming. You really, but for you, Daddy, we wouldn't be here. You know. So that thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
All right, as Barney did mention, we have a new Greenway community up in Washington County. We're spreading the good news up there, and one by one they're coming on board, and that's the town of Salem. The fun part is doling out money, and Senator Salam just made the announcement for the Conservancy, and that was a $50,000 grant program. We're about to award another $30,000 in Greenway community grants for a total of $80,000 at this meeting. Overall, not a lot of money, but a lot of these small projects position a lot of these groups to get even bigger and better projects and bigger and better funding. So the first one on the agenda is the Village of Brewster in Putnam County. This is a really interesting project in that the village is going to partner with Pattern for Progress, a great regional organization that's been a friend of the Greenway and driving the conversation of regionalization in the valley for many, many years. Pattern has a program called the Regional Fellows Program, and they collect leaders across the region and provide training and education on regional issues, and then send them on their way to spread the good news to others in their organizations around the valley. And each year they run that program, and it is the idea that the Pattern Fellows this year will be doing the Main Street study in the village of Brewster. So it's a great public-private partnership. The village is benefiting from the work of the Fellows program that is sponsored by Pattern for Progress. And I know that Peter Hansen is here, and Joe Kachik is here from Pattern for Progress. And Joe, or either one of you want to say a little bit about the project?
Develop a Main Street initiative and revitalization to help boost the village of Brewster. It's located on a train line, and we've got a lot of other work to do in the village, and this should be a really good initial first step. So, thank you.
Great, it's a great model, and we look forward to working with Pattern on similar projects in the future. That grant's for $7,500. The next one's to the City of Poughkeepsie in Dutchess County for $5,000 to support the project we just heard about from Steve and Jeff, the Walkways Gateway project, and that is for $5,000. And you've already heard about the project from Steve and Jeff. The next one's all the way up in Clifton Park in Saratoga County. Clifton Park gets a bad rap for being the epicenter of suburbanization in the Capital District, but this project is really where they can shine, because they are providing better access to trails in their waterfront on the Mohawk River. This $5,000 grant will provide additional design to provide for a better public access to what they're trying to create. They've secured the biggest piece of the money from through the Transportation Enhancement Program. Sorry, Bill, sometimes the DOT doesn't do as much as it could with making the places look pretty, so this will be focused on making the place look pretty so people can use it. And that grant is for $5,000. The next one is the town of Rensselaerville in Albany County, and this is for a farm brew cooperative pilot project. This sparked my interest because the potential benefits to the Greenway board is some home brew potentially at one of our future Greenway meetings. It's an interesting project in that a lot of the hops that's grown in the region used to be grown on local farms. This will support that kind of agricultural activity again, support the development of farm brew operations and local farming projects across the region, and serve as a model to expand those kinds of operations. That is sponsored by the Carey Center in Rensselaerville. Many of you know Carol Ash is leading that organization now. And that grant's for $5,000. Did Rebecca make it here? She didn't make it. She said she was going to be late. And the final one is the town of Lloyd in Ulster County for a Black Creek Water Trail access. On my way here, I actually passed this point, and it is in need of some design and some amenities because it's already being used. And I always wondered why people were parking there. I thought it was maybe a park and ride, but now it makes sense. It's a great location. I don't think anybody needs to acquire any rights of way. I know they're working with the DOT on. They will be working with the DOT in making this access safe, and we look forward to helping the town of Lloyd create better public access to the Black Creek. That grant is for $7,500. So in the same way we ask for recusals in the Conservancy grants, we'll do the same for council grants, and we will vote on the slate. But I will defer to Barney to call for the vote.
Questions, comments, recommendations? And then we'll call for a vote to approve these grants. They have been reviewed by the grant committee, and the grants committee met this morning and by phone a couple of days ago. Anyway, so we have this on. We can have it on one resolution, I believe. And may I have a? So moved. Thank you, and a second. Johnny, thank you very much for the members of the grants committee. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, thank you very much. Mark, yes, Sal.
I'm the chair of the Walkway and intimately involved with the Walkway Gateways to Success. I have to abstain
Okay.
Thank you.
And we'll make sure that that shows, yes, indeed. But you have to stay with everything. You're in every damn thing in this valley, right? And it's sort of a local joke, but it won't be so local when we have probably our next meeting, the meeting after, we explain what's happened on these lawsuits. Valley is the head the head of everything in the valley, but particularly we're talking about the new zoning for the town of Rhinebeck, which has been the subject of some complicated litigation. Do we need a vote for those new guys in Washington County?
We're going to take one vote for everything on the slate, including the new community in Washington County.
Okay, we've already got that on there then? Or?
Yes.
All right, done. And now, is that, and now we do Sarah and then you?
Yeah, we're going to switch back to Conservancy business now.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah.
All right, so going back to the agenda for the Conservancy, we do have the item that is the approval of the Conservancy 2012-2013 budget, and I would like Mark to talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, well, we just gave out money, and now we've got to figure out how we can balance our books because of it. The budget for this year, well, first of all, we're adopting our budget kind of mid-year. Our state fiscal year starts April 1st and September 30th. I'm sorry, that's the federal. Starts April 1st, ends March 31st every year. This is October, so we're a little late. We've traditionally been this late because the state legislature hasn't passed their budget. So we're not doing as good as the state legislature, unfortunately, at this point. But we will strive to do better. So this year's budget of the Conservancy, let me just find it. And I didn't bring my magnifying glasses. But projected revenues for the Conservancy this year are $252,908. And obligated Conservancy funds total $275,141, and those include money that we have for grants and provide through our grant programs. You'll see our projected expenses for this year, and it's a zero-based budget, so our revenues will equal our expenses this year. You can also review the actual spending of last year, 2011-2012. And we were on the mark for last year in terms of spending. No major anomalies. One consideration that the Conservancy will have to think about next year is the potential loss of the revenue from the National Heritage Area. Each year we get an admin fee for the Heritage Area that we use to pay staff and other things, and that will leave a hole in next year's budget, 2013-2014. In the best case scenario, $50,000. In the worst case scenario, $75,000. Scott and I have met with the Finance Committee, and we're working through a number of different options to plug that hole. Hopefully it won't come to that point, and hopefully our friends in Congress will restore our funding for the National Heritage Area, but we are prepared for that reality should that come to pass. So that's my budget presentation. Any questions on the budget? Yes.
I just was wondering, is there anything that we can do to help? I mean, I know our congressman is working hard with that heritage money, but is there anything that we can do?
Well, I think that the same charge that Mark Molinaro provided. Just anytime you have opportunities to talk about it with elected officials, state officials, local officials, mention it. Because the more buzz you create and the more value that's placed on that money and that program, I think the better. The more people that know about it and it's on their radar, I think that's going to help out. We've had tremendous support from our congressional delegation and anticipate even strong support moving forward. Right now, anything that's moving through Congress, they're going to try to slap on something that will restore funding for our heritage area and 11 others across the country. But this being election year, election time, not too much is going to happen until Congress reconvenes in between the election and the first of the year.
So should we call for a motion?
Yes.
Mr. Dess? Okay, so we'll call for a motion to approve the 2012-2013 budget. May I get a motion? Thank you. And second? And all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. So then we'll move on to the Hudson River Greenway Water Trail Site Designation. Now, is that something you will be... Who wants to talk about that?
Well, as Carl mentioned earlier, we have 96 or 97 sites because the 97th is BZAC Environmental Ed Center has applied for designation as both a launch and a campsite. The primary purpose of the water trail is to fulfill our access mandate, to get people to the water. 95% of our users are people who are just going out for the day, but there's 5% that like to take a trip all the way through. We had a couple from Tennessee this year who went from Albany to South Nyack. We just had a group go from Ottawa, and they're on their way to Washington, D.C. By Voyager Canoe to promote water conservation. And they need a place to camp, and BZAC has asked to be a campsite, which is 18 miles above New York City, which is a really critical link for us.
All right. Well, rather than call for a motion for that, we do have one more item on the agenda that we need to bring to your attention, and we'll lump those two together. So I will ask Mark to talk about the flex spending account.
Okay, everyone else that works for the Greenway except for me is a Conservancy employee, and this resolution deals with their benefits. And flex spending, this changes the cap from $5,000 contribution annually down to $2,500. It's a required resolution that we have to pass as a board to change those benefits for our employees. Anything else you want to add, Scott?
The reason for the reduction is not because the board or Mark wants to punish us, but because the federal, the new health care law caps health contributions at $2,500 a year.
Okay, any questions about that? Either item? All right, so we will call for one more motion. Who wants to volunteer from the Conservancy? Thank you. And, okay, from Kevin. So we, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. So we will now move on to the third area of the agenda, which is the Hudson River Valley National Heritage Area, and that's something that Barney and I both chair. Now, what I just want to preface this, there's some wonderful news that is coming through, as you've heard, some not so great news, but I personally would love to know, because one of the items will be the Ramble, which once again, I forget what year, how many years has this been? 13th. Okay, so I know that I always try to get out there and at least do one, if not more, just to really experience how incredibly rich this region is. I try to go to, take a little jaunt. This year I did go to Thatcher Park, and it was a fantastic hawk demonstration, but they had all sorts of other raptors. It was just marvelous. There was hawk watching. So that was mine, and I'm just wondering, not to put anybody on the spot, but if there are any other board members or any in the audience who did experience some of the rambles and could say a word or two. Jennifer? Yes? What? Okay. Stefan?
Yes, my children were finally baptized as river rats thanks to Mary's event in Beacon. They were brought aboard the Woody Guthrie, no better ship to bring you in touch with the river, except for the Clearwater. And we also had the privilege of going to the Maritime Center of the Hudson Valley in Kingston for the dedication of Clearwater's new barn headquarters.
Right, yeah.
So Clearwater's had a resounding presence as usual in the valley, and my children are now official river rats.
Wonderful. Yes, Steve.
Scenic Hudson hosted I think it was our 5th or 6th annual farmland cycling tour, and we had 250 people.
Whoa.
This year. We pedaled through conserved farm areas in northern Dutchess and southern Columbia counties, and it was a huge success.
How great. All right. Any? Yes?
Yes. I went to the Slab Sides opening of their new trail, which was hosted by Joan Burrows and many of her incredibly dedicated volunteers. It was a wonderful ceremony, and we clipped the vine as the ribbon opening the new trail network, and it was really a beautiful event. And Joan Burrows deserves a lot of credit for the way she's able to inspire and mobilize volunteers to bring their energy to the creation of that place. So I really enjoyed that.
All right, Fran.
The Estuary Program is a co-sponsor of the Ramble, and we provided a number of estuary-themed events where people could go looking for, singing for fish in the Hudson, and wildlife walks, and kayak tours. I don't have exact numbers, but literally hundreds of people participated in those, and we also caught hundreds of little fish that were on their annual migration. They were born in the Hudson this spring. We catch them in the fall as they're migrating downriver to eventually leave the Hudson and migrate out to the ocean. So it's a great learning experience, and we're very pleased to be a partner with Greenway and helping to host the Ramble.
Yeah, that's what's so great, because there are actually many individual events, but the Greenway, and some of them have been going on for years, but with the Greenway umbrella, all of a sudden there's just so much more marketing that can be done, and it's all part of the larger package, very similar in philosophy to the walkway. So you need these consolidating forces, and it just all comes together. Jane, did you have?
The hike has been held every year since it started. 2 years I wasn't able to do it, but it never fails to impress. And if somebody would like to be taken up the top of Anthony's Nose to view the view there, I will be happy to escort them. It's a favorite place of mine to go, and the people who come absolutely love the hike.
Great.
The Hudson River Water Trail Association and Greenway sponsored a fundraiser for breast cancer research that went to a local foundation, not to a national foundation. And we had 100 kayaks on the water between Cold Spring and Mansville raising money.
Wow.
Kayaks, white elk beers, stand-up paddleboards, and canoes.
Amazing. All right, well, it sounds like there was great participation, and I just encourage for all the incredible things that we're doing, we especially as board members, and obviously all those who are deeply involved with many of these projects, that we do avail ourselves to actually participate. So the other news before we just move in that I think is not even on here because it's such new news, but we were delighted, although a little bit worried, to hear that Mark has been, and the Greenway has been designated as the entity in charge of a new program by the governor called Path to History, which many of you may have heard of. There have been a number of agencies working on it, but it just looks like that, and it made so much sense for the Greenway to be deeply involved, because many of the programs many of the ideas from this Path to History project that the governor instituted were so much in line with much of what we're doing. It has to do with a signage system up and down the thruway, website, handheld devices to tell people about the riches of this the Hudson Valley. So it's only natural that Mark would be designated. But the only worry is with the incredible amount that he and this very wonderful but small staff do, how will that affect your work? But with that preamble, I will ask you to give us an update.
Thanks. So it's a tremendous opportunity to serve in this role for the governor to advance the Path Through History in the next phase. I think the lessons that we learned and the approach that we take at the Greenway has tremendous potential to be a model for how to deploy this program across the state, bring in new partners. The work that we have to do between now and the end of the year is figure out how to distribute $1 million in marketing money for heritage tourism. We're in the process of doing that. There will be presentations across the state in each of the regions about this project. There will also be public input. What that will look like, I have no idea yet, and I will be working to schedule those meetings and working to frame that process out. And so that will be taking a lot of my time between now and the end of the year, but it's an exciting opportunity. It's one I look forward to. I think the governor recognizes, and as we have known for many years, that New York's history is unparalleled and that it's under-leveraged, and that's a tremendous economic development driver. Heritage tourists spend on average about over $900 per trip. That's more than other tourist segments. More tourists participate in heritage cultural activities when they travel, above 70%. So it's a market that's ready to be tapped into to support the economy of New York State. So more to come. I'll be practicing my stump speech, I'm sure, on many of you as we develop the words for the presentations working across the state. I'll also be, tapping into the members of the Hudson River Valley National Heritage Area Management Committee to make sure some of the concepts that we're working on will actually fit within projects and programs that are currently existing, and also leverage those programs. The theme is for everything to eventually work towards a seamless tourism experience. That talking point is easy to say, very hard to actually achieve, but we will be working towards that goal. So that's what I have on Path Through History. Hopefully I won't get a lot of phone calls, but I'm sure I will moving forward. Yes, Jennifer.
Quick question regarding the path.
Yes.
Again, the signage on the thruway. Is there some criteria for the regional grants to extend the path inward? Wayfinding schemes that extend into the counties?
Well, that's still in process, and they're still working that thing out. And I'm not sure what I can divulge right now to you about that in the public forum. But we're working on it, and I think it's going to satisfy some of the concerns that were raised early on. That was such a political response, wasn't it?
You're getting good.
Yes, Kitty.
What is the budget allocation for this new path?
The governor announced $1 million, guaranteed $100,000 for each of the 10 regions. And the regions we're talking about are the Regional Economic Development Council regions.
Is any of it for your office to do any management?
We are operating within existing resources.
Okay.
That's also another topic.
With an existing budget.
Oh.
All right. Any other questions about Path Through History? I'm looking forward to it. So next on the agenda is we heard about the Ramble, but I want to give you some statistics. We had 136 partners this year. It's the 13th year and over 175 events. I'd like to recognize Beth Campachero, who is the coordinator of the Ramble, pulls it all together every year. And all of you that contribute to the Ramble events throughout the year. Without volunteer assistance, we could not, wouldn't happen. Mary Schmalz is here, and Stefan recognized Mary for all of her work in and around Wappingers, hosting numerous Ramble events in that area, and that's huge. We're still working on the attendance figures and the economic impact of the Ramble. We are also working with a firm that's doing an overall economic impact analysis of the National Heritage Area, and we want them to work on getting us a methodology to track economic impact for the Ramble moving forward each year. So we look forward to that. As I mentioned before, I'm going to talk about the evaluation. So the evaluation of the National Heritage Area program has been completed. The evaluation says we have done what we said we were going to do. We have leveraged the amount of money, exceeded the expectation for leveraging the amount of money we said we were going to leverage, and we are achieving the mission of the National Heritage Area and, by extension, the National Park Service. So there's lots of details. The entire report is over 150 pages, and if anybody wants to see that, I know I've emailed it to the Management Committee, but any of the Greenway board members want to see it, I can share that with you also. I mentioned about the legislation to extend the National Heritage Area funding authorization. The funding authorization for the Heritage Area sunsetted on September 30th, 2012. We're not in this alone. 11 other heritage areas across the country, representing about a quarter of all National Heritage Areas, are in the same boat that we are. We are going with quantity, I guess, over quality, but that's not necessarily true in terms of legislation. We are working with our members of Congress on every single opportunity to put a bill in or to put additional language in existing bills or omnibus bills to get our heritage area individually or the 12 heritage areas collectively their funding authorization extended. So more to come on that, hopefully. Teaching the Hudson Valley. Again, this year's Teaching the Hudson Valley Institute was held at the Wallace Center in Hyde Park. I know they had a record attendance. They focused on conflict and crisis, being that it is the sesquicentennial of the Civil War. And so the theme translated from conflict and crisis and Civil War era to conflict and crisis with civil rights. So Civil War to Civil Rights theme. Teaching the Hudson Valley is a great model to advance place-based education. It may be on the complete other end of the spectrum of where the education system is going right now, with Common Core standards and standardized testing. But we know and are committed to the fact that place-based education has the power to be more resilient. And connecting students with their place and the history of their place is a lot more sticky than memorization involved in standardized testing. So we continue to support that program. And Steve's wife, Debbie Duke, is doing a tremendous job as the coordinator of teaching the Hudson Valley. She's been doing that for a lot of years, and she just does a great job pulling that all together. The next one is the Nature and Culture Initiative. We have two PR initiatives that we're kind of working to advance, and these are both regional curated exhibits, and we do this in partnership with a lot of different organizations. And the first one you may have heard about, and that's the expansion of the Hudson River School Art Trail. We've worked with Betsy Jacks and the Thomas Cole National Historic Site on that project. And Betsy, you want to say a few words about where that project is and the New York Times article and all that kind of good stuff?
And now beyond, where you can see the view that's in a famous 19th century landscape painting. And we've enabled visitors to compare the view as it looks today with the painting and have that aha moment when you realize that not much has actually changed in a lot of these places. The vistas are still as beautiful as they are in those celebrated paintings. So in the last year, with Mark's help and also with Olana and numerous other partners in the region, the trail has expanded from the original 8 sites in 2 counties to now 17 sites in the Hudson Valley in 4 counties. And also it's expanded to a couple of other states, Massachusetts and New Hampshire. So with that greatly expanded trail and also a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities to create a mobile app for this trail, an expanded website that works on smartphones and iPads and things of that sort, so that you can take this information out with you on the trail without having to print and distribute printed guides. People now find their information on their smartphone, so this is bringing that whole project up into the 21st century. So with the expansion of the trail to more than double its size, as well as creating this mobile app, we put out a big PR effort. And we said at our outset, the goal really, our ultimate goal was an article in the New York Times. And that's what we not only achieved that, we achieved a 2-page full-color spread in the national edition of the New York Times. So we were really people are coming from around the country. We bump into them at the Cole site all the time. They have the article in hand or their smartphone, and they're saying, "Where is this? Where is that?" They're coming. We had a couple from Louisiana that I ran into, and they're just, we saw the article. We're here. We can't believe how beautiful the Hudson Valley is. So,
no, thanks, Betsy.
Delighted.
There's one thing we can't export. We can't export the view, so we have to bring people here. There's no other way around it. The next one is a curated exhibit focusing on Tiffany landscape windows. And the Tiffany company made these tremendous, innovated in glassmaking and made these tremendous sort of artistic pieces that have been underappreciated, but are all over the place in the Hudson River Valley. And they're landscape windows. Some windows that they created have angels and saints, but these celebrate the landscape and I think sort of the metaphysical celebrate the metaphysical aspects of the landscape. And it's appropriate that most of them are in churches. We have identified about 20 sites, mainly churches, where these landscape windows exist. We're anchored in this exhibition at the landscape window in the Metropolitan, the landscape window at the Corning Museum of Glass, but mainly they're in the Hudson River Valley National Heritage Area. We've engaged a architectural historian, Ned Pratt, and Barney had lunch with Ned Pratt earlier in the week. And I understand Barney will be taking the full project manager load off of my shoulders for this project, right, Chairman? Yes. Silence speaks volumes about that. But the idea is that we're going to put these things on a website so people will be able to download like a one-pager that provides interpretation, provides a little orientation to the venue, and encourages them, obviously, to donate to the churches that make these, maintain the windows and make them available to the public. So more to come on that in the future. We're just about wrapping up the draft text for the interpretation. We've secured the pictures, and we now have to figure out how to put that up on the website. Anything to add, Chairman, about the Tiffany landscape windows?
Yeah, except that oddly enough, where's that city you live, Mark? Troy.
I live in Albany.
Okay, but
next to Troy.
But yeah, okay. This is going to focus on Albany and Troy, and it's really limited, of course, to these Tiffany landscape windows. Lewis Comfort Tiffany, not breakfast at Tiffany's or diamond rings. His son, in fact. And this is exciting because today we have a lot of these map guides. The Tiffany landscape window project will be on the
National Heritage Area website, HudsonRiverValley.com.
And so that, perhaps it might somehow or another make it into print later on, but initially the idea is to be on our website. And
yes.
And you're going to tell them a little bit about the rain falling? Or you're telling them all these good things are happening, but bad things are happening in Washington.
Yes, I gave an overview of our strategy.
I know, but the thing is that it's more serious than that. If we don't get reapproved, this is the next to last meeting of the Heritage Area.
Well, the Heritage Area continues.
Well, but it doesn't have any money.
With less resources.
Okay. And if we've tried everything else, prayer would help.
Well, prayer always helps. Barney did point out the map guides that were at your locations. These are new map guides. They're updated. And we just had them reprinted, I believe, in July. They include a couple new sites on the map. They include Clearwater moving from Beacon to Kingston, and a number of other updates. And this time they include the National Park Service logo, which is good. It provides, I think, a brand that the Heritage Area should be aligned with. And so we still have some money to reprint our other existing brochures, and we will continue to do that. The final item on the National Heritage Area agenda is the Washington-Rochambeau Revolutionary Route. Carl mentioned National Historic Trails. This is one of those National Historic Trails. It goes from Rhode Island all the way down to Yorktown in Virginia. It marks the route that the French Expeditionary Force followed on their march to help the colonial army, the Continental Army, defeat or achieve the final victory over the British forces at Yorktown. What's cool in this area is that the French forces kind of met up with the American forces in the Hudson Valley, and where the trail goes through the Hudson Valleys in Rockland and Westchester County. Way back when, in 1997, we received a Transportation Enhancement Program grant to interpret the trail. We subsequently transferred that money to the National Park Service so they could interpret the trail because it's now a National Historic Trail. Since we last met, they have made another site visit with their consultants, and the consultants charged with designing these signs and designing the interpretive materials. And I believe there are about 20 sites that we've selected for interpretation, and the interpretation strategies vary at each individual site. Some are one panel, some are stand-up panels, and there's also some room for cell phone and smartphone interpretation. We are in the vanguard of interpretation of the National Historic Trail. This is the first infusion of money for interpretation from the National Park Service for this, and I think we're pleased to be a partner. We're pleased to have been able to transfer the money to the National Park Service. And I'm pleased that I'm no longer the project manager and somebody in the National Park Service is. So, but that's a great project. Anything to add about Washington-Rochambeau, Chairman? It's another reason to like the French.
Mark, it's 4 minutes of 12.
Yes.
And you got to wrap up.
I'm right on schedule, Chairman. I don't know what you're thinking. I just want to point to a couple things in my Executive Director's report that were not on the agenda but were very critical. Carl obviously helped out tremendously with the National Water Trail designation. We also, in partnership with Parks and Trails New York, launched a cycling guidebook of the Hudson River Valley. That project was supported through money from the Greenway and from the National Heritage Area. It really provides a template for how to do a tourism product. It provides a map, a huge loop from New York City all the way around the valley on both sides of the Hudson River. It provides service areas where cyclists can find restaurants, hotels, and amenities that they would need to have access to while they traveled. A number of people in the room provided assistance. Steve Rosenberg, Jeff Anzavino, Jane Daniels, Bill Gordon and his Bike Ped team in Region 8 DOT. All served on the advisory committee for the project, and it was a long time coming, but we have a great final product in the cycling guidebook. And I have some copies here if anybody would like to check those out. Betsy mentioned the Hudson River School Art Trail. I mentioned, and the chairman mentioned, some of the realities of the federal funding already. I'd also like to mention another interesting project we're partnered with the estuary program on, and that's mapping scenic resources in the Hudson Valley. We secured funding through a quadricentennial grant, and we are in the process working with the estuary program and DEC staff to create a interactive database and mapping program that will ultimately help local communities and local advocacy groups and policymakers and people that are involved in environmental review find quickly and easily scenic resources that exist around their project. They'll also be able to use that as a tool to further define scenic resources in their communities, and it's positioned to be a tool that they can use to develop more analytical approaches like viewshed analysis. Right now we have a draft mapper in ArcGIS. We're working with the DEC to figure out whether they'll provide hosting services. So more to come on that. I think it's going to be a great product that communities will be able to use as a tool to do that kind of work.
When is it expected to be completed?
Well, there's a lot of unknowns. Our original goal was this summer, but we've been delayed. So the next step is identifying who's going to host this, then going out to contract with a developer to actually build a user-friendly interface, and then we'll be able to have a better timeline. And I think one of the most important things that I can do in my executive director's report is thank the staff that makes this all happen. So I'd just like to recognize Scott Keller, who pays all the bills and does all the financing, and is our water trail guru, and Beth Campachero, who is the community outreach coordinator, trails director, board meeting and logistics person, you name it, Beth does it, and the Ramel coordinator, and the Heritage Weekend coordinator, and our new intern, Emily Gardner, from the SUNY Albany Planning Program. Thank you, Emily, for all the work that you've done and will do in the future, and she's highly employable after she graduates from her master's program at SUNY Albany. So please join me in thanking the staff. Carl did mention before, but he mentioned partnerships, and partnerships is what we're in business to do. And I'd just like to mention that Carl was tremendous in getting the Water Trail nominated a National Water Trail, but one of the main reasons why it was nominated a National Water Trail was that the partnerships that the Greenway has worked to develop. The Greenway is a shepherd of a big idea, oftentimes, and it's the commitment of partners like Scenic Hudson, Department of State, the Estuary Program, state parks, local governments up and down the Hudson River Valley that created that public access that we have knitted together into this water trail. So it serves as a great example of how the Greenway works, and as Willie Janeway said at the designation event, how government can work, which is not often heard today. So thank you all for coming today.
Sarah, I think that's it. We've said this before, but some of you, well, certainly Winnie Aldrich could remember when there were 12 people on the staff, right? And now there are 4, and less sometimes is more. Mark does an extraordinary job, as you can see, with not much money, but an awful lot of brains. And now, unless we have something else, the next meeting will be on January 9th, and you have a place for that, or?
Not yet.
Okay.
Someplace warm.
Okay. And okay, and to the public comment, you must be all exhausted. It's 2 hours. Any questions? Yes, Betsy. And Betsy, that was a great... Betsy has brought to the art trail virtue and knowledge.
City of Kingston helped put on the press launch, and the Vanderbilt site. There have been the Cropsey home, numerous great partners throughout the valley. So I want to especially thank the Mohawk people since they're here today.
Barney, can I say one thing? The Cold Spring Waterfront, Mark's been invited, and anybody here It's been a 5-year project, $100,000 project, partially funded by a Greenway grant, and it's finally being dedicated on Friday. Replaced all the lighting, replaced all the railing on the Cold Spring waterfront. If you've ever been down there on the water, it's a great project, and it's actually taken longer to do than the walkway, I believe, but it's a good outcome.
When did you start it?
I'm sorry?
When did it get started?
2007 is when we started talking to the village, and it's been
That's just about the time you came to the valley, right?
No, a little bit after, but we've been through 3 administrations in the village and finally gotten there. So, but everybody is invited if you wish to come, and then have a lovely dinner at a Cold Spring restaurant if you wish. Yes.
Okay.
6 o'clock on Friday evening.
I'd also like to invite anybody from the Greenway to come down to the historic Milton on Hudson train station this Sunday between 4 and 6. We are having a cocktail reception to thank the people who have supported our project. And the Greenway was generous in giving us a grant at one point to help us rehabilitate this lovely station. So come on down, and if you want more information, see me afterwards.
All right, we will. Okay.
Regarding that window project, I'm not sure if this is on the list. There's a huge stained glass window at Henry Hudson's Half Moon in one of the banks on Market Street in Poughkeepsie. It's as big as that screen in a vertical orientation, and I will, it's right around the street, down from our office. I'll photograph it and send it to you, and I understand that it maybe works more than the building.
Good. Anybody else? And the meeting is ended. Thank you all very much. A beautiful day in the Hudson Valley, and Mark, you did very well.